Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is SBIR Tips from a Female Founder. I'm Robert Brook. I'm the Director of Federal Funding Programs here at the Center for Innovative Technology. And with us today is our special guest, Pallabi Saboo, who is the CEO of Harmonia Holdings Group. Really quickly, today's webinar is funded in part through a grant award from the U.S. Small Business Administration. The goal of this grant and the program here is to help educate early-stage startups, pre-startups, and other early-stage technology companies across the Commonwealth of Virginia about various funding sources and resources available to support your ventures. CIT has three core funding programs to help this effort. The Commonwealth Research Commercialization Fund is a grant-based program providing early-stage grants of between $50,000 and $100,000 for both small business as well as university and other research institutions. These are grant-based programs. For more information, go to our website at CIT.org. Our Federal Funding Assistance Program I will talk about here shortly. And our GAP Seed Fund, the CIT GAP Funds, is an investment seed fund providing between $50,000 to $200,000 early stage investment in high growth potential companies here in the Commonwealth. Again, for more information about that, visit our website at CIT.org. Briefly about our funding assistance program for SBIR and STTR efforts. We are the state entity that in charge with this effort. We're working with university researchers, small businesses across Virginia in their efforts to learn about, understand, and apply for these valuable funding sources. We provide some strategy consultation, mentoring, a lot of low-cost proposal training and review courses. We have workshops coming up every quarter across the state, as well as webinars that are recorded from past webinars of various topics. We help introduce companies to expert proposal consultants. There's some discounts available to some of those consultants as well. Our investment team can provide a readiness review for those who are looking to help leverage SBIR with other venture capital. And we also have a small grant award fund between $500 and $2,000 to help early stage applicants who are learning the program to help them hire qualified outside SBIR consultants to help them get to their proposal awards sooner. And again, there's a CRCF SBIR and STTR matching grant program as part of that Commonwealth Research Commercialization Fund that companies in Virginia are eligible to apply to. There we have a suite of recorded webinars on various topics at the URL listed here. As well, if you have any questions, you can contact me directly at my email and phone number listed here. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Pallabi really quickly here. Get her slides going here really quickly. And well, Pallabi, she is, as I mentioned, the CEO of Harmonia Holdings Group, and they have an extensive track record in SBIRs, building and operating successful technology and technology-related SBIR companies. She's acquired Harmonia in 2006, and since then has grown it aggressively as it seeks to develop specialized technologies and technology-enabled services geared towards the federal and commercial sectors. With that, Pallabi, I'll let you take it from here. Talk a little bit more about the company, your background, what the company does, and then we'll move in a little bit towards talking a little bit about your experiences in SBIR, the kind of agencies you guys focus on, and maybe some tips and suggestions for those who might be early in the process to understand what a successful project plan and SBIR company can look like.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for the nice introduction. And I'll share the lessons I've learned along the way. It's certainly been a fun ride the last 11 years. I started in 2006 when I came back to the workforce from being a mother for 4 years and didn't know where to go, and I wanted all the flexibility for my newborn. And starting a business seemed like the right thing to do. I came across my co-founder now, Dr. Abrams, who was looking for somebody to help market his technology ideas. both of us didn't come from too much money, and since he had been a university professor, he was familiar with the grants world. So we thought, okay, let's use that avenue to kind of fund some of the ideas he has. Robert, I don't seem to have control, but we can change the slide now. We examined together looking into the SBIR world. Very fortunately, the very first SBIR that we bid for, we happened to win. We got a phase one. We had no idea about the value of debt done, but we were super excited. We did a news release. We were both living in Blacksburg. It's a small town. Certainly it was, in the world of Blacksburg now, SBIRs is common because we all sit in the corporate research center, and most of the companies, seeing what we did, started pursuing the SBIR industry. But we started, and we fast realized that if we have to take it to beyond phase one, which used to be at that time only $70,000, no matter which agency you looked at, the first one didn't go to phase two. We had to kind of work it from a different angle than trying to write a pure research paper. So the second phase one that we won, which was pretty much halfway through our phase one, we started networking. We didn't have money to do marketing, but we started meeting people. We started meeting larger businesses, because the first lesson we learned in our initial phase one was, in any agency you go into, there's going to be a large prime who's been working with that agency forever and ever. And government or any agency or any company usually likes a large company because they're going to be around for a long time. We used to get this question asked, how do we know you're going to be in business tomorrow? There are 2 of you or 3 of you or 10 of you, and you might just go under any time. So we needed to find a large company who could be like our backbone and provide the stability that we lacked. The second thing we realized as we were doing from the failure of our first phase one was, without marketing, they don't know you. And if we don't have money for marketing, we've got to have something else take the place of marketing. So we looked at 2 avenues to do that. And one was getting all the certifications that you see on the screen. We worked towards a CMMI level certification. We worked towards all the ISO certifications possible. Then we worked towards getting a lot of awards. These don't need money, but in part and parcel of doing your SBIR work, from the dollars that you have SBIR, if you can work yourself and plan yourself to getting good recommendations, good client testimonials, these awards tend to follow suit. If you look at the one that we got last year in 2016 from USDA, which is Department of Agriculture, now this is 11 years later, but we didn't do anything to get that award. We did good work. Every agency has people who has to recommend companies that they've worked with, small and large, who they think have done well. We were just front and center in terms of companies that we had done well and got the award. And the same goes for all the awards down the list. The one in orange is the Tibbett Award, which is very specific to SBIRs. In the world of SBIRs, the only award that you get is the SBIR Award, which is testimonial to transition. And we were lucky enough to get it twice. Early on in 2007, because our second phase one SBIR, we did take to a phase two. And we used Raytheon as our backbone, large company. They went along with us in phase two. They bought our technology, and that transition led us to get a award, the Tibbett Award. We hadn't even heard of it, and Raytheon nominated us, so that was great. In 2013, which was much later, we were a much more mature company, but we went from phase one directly to phase three, which is transition, in a period of 6 months, and we were recognized in the White House. But on the coattails, every time you get an award, people look at you differently. People realize you're here to stay. People realize you do good work. That, coupled with all the certifications we have, made the need for marketing go away, because certainly the dollars were not there. And marketing is a whole industry, but I'm not a great believer of just pure marketing. I think word of mouth and reputation in the industry that we are in, which is IT. It's not an end product, which is not a user-based product, which is more a B2B product. Certifications and reputation is more important. But let me move on. Robert, if you could take me to the next slide. Thank you. here is a layout of all the technologies we do. We started off in the user interface space, and we had this dream that we'll become a user interface company, build a great product, and then sell it and exit. That unfortunately didn't happen to us. We never could master the art of selling a product, or when we were trying to sell a product which was in the 2008 space, the market was so down that nobody had the money for product sales. And as we got educated along the process and we met with all these large primes, we understood that they had more operations fund for spending small amounts of money on development rather than a large amount of money in either acquiring a company or acquiring a product and helping us exit. So we figured, okay, we'll just keep building technologies which help enable our large primes to do better, and we'll keep getting work slowly in that process. So we started with the one in green, which was human system interfaces. And no one SBIR is enough to build a technology. You have, at that time, it was 70,000 for a phase one and 750,000 for a phase two. So we went after yet another SBIR topic, which was a UI, then yet another, and so on until we had a very mature UI platform. But as we were doing the UI platform, not every cycle has a topic related to UI, and we needed to stay in business because you have to pay the bills and you have to keep growing. So we looked at topics which were remotely related, or even closely related rather than remotely related, and we came to the gray cycle that you see on decision making. A natural outflow of user interfaces was decision making. If you make decision making easier, you need better technology at the back, but you need better technology in the front. And at the same time, this was in the 2008 framework, DoD had cut the budget for operating the ships by two-thirds. So one-third of the people had to do the job of three-thirds of the people, which means they needed better decision-making and easier decision-maker for the operator who might be in a situation of war or attack from multiple domains. So topics of decision-making were coming out, and we naturally progressed into that area. That led to the area of blue, because the minute you start making user interfaces which are talking to a whole set of data at the back, you need big data handling. From blue, then we went to infrastructure, and now to cybersecurity. And what that helped us do, since we couldn't sell products, we hadn't mastered that art, and some people do it successfully, it gave us a broader base of doing services work. We carried the primes with us. We did a lot of work with them. That work went on to phase three, because if phase three ultimately is dollars that you get beyond your phase two, and any technology that you do in SBIR development, if it leads to phase three, is considered commercialization success. So if I move on to the next slide, we realized if we had to keep winning SBIRs, and we didn't want to just be an industry shop, we needed two things. We needed a high commercialization index, so we needed to transition, and we needed to have revenue other than just SBIR. Here on the top half, I talk about all our sample transitions we've done with Navy for battle management aids, which is UI focused and then managing large amounts of data at the back. Raytheon, which was our first customer for the UI tools. Then we had Lockheed Martin and PMA 280 for weapon control systems, and so on and so forth. At the bottom, I have listed all a sample of our federal clients. As you can see, first we started with just the Department of Defense. We had Air Force, Army, DARPA, and we kept it broad so that, if one agency had a budget cut, for example, when we started with NAVAIR, there was a point in the middle that NAVAIR had a massive funding cut. But since we had other agencies, we were protected. And after the DoD, in the last 3 years, we've forayed into the civilian sector, and our major success came there because we were using our whole portfolio of SBIR-developed technologies to provide services work and to get an edge over every other Beltway bandit who didn't have the technology portfolio and who was just doing services work. And I think that led to a lot of success. Today we stand fairly stable at 400 employees, given the strategies that we have employed in the past. And we have industry partners like GD, Leidos, Lockheed, Northrop, Raytheon, SAIC, who who've carried us and we've carried them in a, sometimes us as the prime and sometimes them as the prime, depending on the opportunity on the table. And we've kept our relationships intact. So I think that support of the industry partner and the breadth of technologies keeps us going strong. Robert, I don't know what else to say, but that's the synopsis of Harmonia.
So you mentioned about looking at if there wasn't a topic that was open that was exactly right on to what you were doing or looking to develop, that there was other topics that were maybe like you said, they weren't too much of a reach, but you applied to those. Did you reach out to the agency, the topic author, before you did that sometimes, or did you have discussions? I know that if you're mostly DoD focused here, so there's opportunity to engage with them during an open period before the topic's officially open. Did you take advantage of that? And obviously, as you built contacts within the domain or interest you're working in, you knew these people, so they knew your background. So was there how much of a stretch was there in applying for the topics that weren't exactly written for you, so to speak, but there was some sort of relation?
So even if there was a stretch, supposing there was a cycle and there was no topic, I remember this was in 2008, around that time, which was a bad time, right, because everybody saw budget cuts. There wasn't a single UI-based topic across any agency. But we had a good relationship with several primes, and we had a good relationship. We were very Navy-focused then. And we knew if every element needs a UI piece, because ease of use is very important. Any operator out there is not a technocrat, so he needed ease of use. So we approached, and as we'd worked in an agency, we knew which primes were working in that group. So we approached the prime. I remember the very first time we did it, and we said, we can bring this piece, and we have to be front and center because it's a small business set aside. At the end of the day, it's a SBIR. But you have this piece that you're already building for the client. If we match up and go as a teaming partner, we'll front it. We have to do 51% of the work, and you'll still get 49%. And that's the first time we approached somebody. So that gap, as we were reaching out to a technology which wasn't just purely UI, was filled by the large company. And in that open period, when we spoke to the topic authors, we spoke as a team to the topic authors. The topic author knew, people like to do business with people they know. I wanted to make sure that they had heard from us before they were looking at a proposal and they had no name or no face to put next to the proposal. And that strategy, I think, I'd advise all companies in the SBIR circuit to do that, because an unknown is still an unknown, and you want to make sure you reduce that unknown factor as much as you can in that open period or even before the open period. The other thing we did, Robert, was, after having learned that you might not get topics that you can bid on in every cycle, we learned to meet with people, understand their needs, and through large companies propose topics. So if I take an example, let's say General Dynamics is working with Missile Defense Agency. They know they're funded to do a certain amount of work, right? Because it's services for them, services contracts for them. And there might be technologies that General Dynamics has to build. Where do you get the fund from them? Unless General Dynamics puts their own IRAD, which is their own internal research and development funds, they can't build that piece. But we could approach General Dynamics and say, we will do that IRAD piece through a SBIR. So why don't you put a topic out there? And we'll bid fair and square like anybody else. And supposing we get selected, that technology is built, we can pay you as part of a SBIR to test that technology. So it creates a win-win all the way across. And that's worked for us. I don't know how others do it, but it certainly created more success for us.
And I think you brought up a great point, especially with the contracting agencies like all the DoD entities of the agencies do create topics based on feedback from industry, their industry partners of the primes, their program executive office, PEOs, and they shoot these topic ideas in order to get specific topics written. And so the more engaged you are in that process, working with the larger companies who have the larger programs of record, so to speak, that they're engaged with, the more integrated you can be and be able to respond. So that's a great business development tool. Don't just wait for the topics to come out. Engage with the partners in that area with that agency or multiple agencies. Understand that and engage with them. A lot of startup companies have to start very small in that, but everybody has to start small. So we always encourage you to
Mm-hmm.
try to engage with the major primes and others, maybe even the mid-tier primes and smaller companies that have that experience to help bring get your experience level up, so to speak, even in a proposal. So the agencies have their, the primes have their set aside goals as well. So there's a lot of integration in all these different mandates and the programs and funding and that work their way through the SBIR program. So that's a great strategy. Um, you mentioned your phase three transition successes. Now, phase three isn't SBIR money; it's other money acquisition contracts that are related to the work you did in the SBIR, but it's other money. Um, how do you measure success in SBIR? I mean, obviously, you're tracking your SBIRs in these phase threes that you're able to secure. What is the agencies are tell us a little about your goals there, your successes, and how do you then put those back into maybe new proposals?
So the way we measure phase three is, like you said correctly, was anything that is not SBIR dollars. That means anything which doesn't come through R6 or R1, which is how the government defines as R&D funds. Our first phase three, for example, was when we took our NAVSUB, which is Navy supplies work, right in phase one to a phase three. They needed a cashless payment system to go on ships, and the first ship that they needed to launch it on was leaving in 6 months from the day we were awarded phase one. And there were 4 companies in that phase one circuit. We just proposed a technology, they had liked it, and before we even built a prototype in phase two, which was a longer step, they started giving us services work towards seeing what would work on that ship. They gave us program dollars. Program dollars are not R&D dollars, so that got counted as phase three dollars. That was a small amount. I mean, this is a better part of 8 years ago. But from there on, any time we got program dollars or matching funds, which is a thing that we didn't know early enough, and probably you have a session on that, but I'll just touch on that, Robert. Anytime you get anybody interested in your phase two, let us say I make an Army SBIR, and I get a Navy program office interested in that technology. At the end of the day, DoD is DoD, and they all need the same kind of technology with just some tweaking. And if I get a Navy SBIR dollar to come and say, okay, I'll put even $100,000 from my program money to customize what you're making in phase two to our end, that is phase three money. Or anytime, let's say, a prime comes and says, you're building this technology, it might be for managing all your automatic battle management aids, but I need this legacy piece which does the same thing updated to a newer platform, and I'll add it on to your phase two. That's phase $3. Or anytime we bid on services work, let's say I bid on something for the Patent and Trademark Office, which needs automated testing tools. And I already have a SBIR which is doing automation on testing tools, but specific to, let's say, the Air Force. But they give me a services contract to build that same thing, use that same technology, and then do the maintenance of that for the agency. That I count as phase $3 because it's taken a SBIR technology. That's how they got interested in me, and it's now applying it to a different area. And I think that's what the government wants. At the end of the day, the government wants to make sure when they give you money, you're not misusing it. It's not an entitlement, but you're actually giving back to the government and making improvements across any agency. It doesn't matter.
So
does that answer the question, Rob?
Yeah, that's a good point. That there is an overriding commercialization focus of SBIR. It's not just money to do cool, fun research. It's to try to get it out, and they have their own measurement mandates for companies who are not using it in that way. So there's ways which is important for a company that's especially the DoD related to focus on to understand your successes so you can report that in future proposal submissions. You also mentioned an interesting fact. So that example of the Patent and Trademark Office. Now, are those the kinds of things that have you been able to initiate sole source contracts, if you will, based on your SBIR work with other agencies to get basically work that didn't really go out for bid. Have you been able to secure those kinds of contracts?
We have, when we were a little smaller, there is a pot of money which is called, I don't remember the exact term, but if it's anything under 100,000, they don't have to compete it. So that's the first, when we learned this is years back, we went after small pots of money that wouldn't, simplified acquisition it's called, that wouldn't have to be competed, but we could get it by meeting small business agencies in different, every agency has a small business office. By meeting them, we could get some of these simplified acquisition funds directed to us without competition. What certainly also helped was because we are hub zone, and even if you're just simple small woman or woman owned or 8A or hub zone, as long as you have only 3 companies or 2 companies, I'm not sure about the rule there, bidding on it in an RFI stage, which is request for information stage, and they find that 2 companies can do the work, it never goes into a full form open competition. They can just direct those 2 or 3 companies to put a proposal in. It's not sole source, but it's definitely 2 companies bidding versus 100 makes competition a lot more easier. So we were able to to respond intelligently to RFIs, to restrict it to 2 or 3 companies bidding. Also, the third avenue we've used is, as we've worked very, very closely with SBIR, for example. Navy is our strongest DoD partner. As we worked very closely with any agency in the Navy, and since we have a relationship, we've been able to get smaller amount of sole source funds directed to us simply because it was enhancing the technology that we'd already built in phase 1, phase 2, and they wanted it to do one more piece of the puzzle. But those small things slowly add up to become quite big. You know, we came to, in 11 years, I don't know if it's a fast growth or a small growth. It's certainly not a Facebook, but it's certainly not a company that went under. We went from 2 people to 400 people, and most of our growth came in the last 4 years when we really started, you know, putting all our lessons learned to work. So I think we've done fairly well in directing funds to us based on the relationships we built.
So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you've seen in SBIR. We've mentioned some of these processes and tips. You've learned these things through probably realizing things you've maybe done wrong, or gee, we should have done that. What do you think has been is the biggest challenge for you guys, or was a big challenge that you had to overcome within the SBIR processes?
So I'll tell you 2, because one story I never forget. I kicked myself a lot after that. So in the early days, I remember one of these large primes that we had taken them in on as a teaming partner, and we proposed phase 1. They write you a letter of recommendation. That's for free. They believe in the technology. They write you a letter of support. Then we went on to phase 2, and on the kickoff call with them, before we did a kickoff call with the government, they wanted, rightfully so, 49% of the money. And I was like, you're going to be kidding me. I'm not going to give you 49% of the money. How am I going to build the technology? I mean, at the end of the day, I have a reputation to protect. We've got to deliver something. And I walked away from that. Biggest mistake, because if you don't engage your large prime, which means how do you engage them? At the end of the day, they have to be in business too. If you don't share the wealth with the large prime who's written you a letter of reference, you'll do a phase 2 and you'll land in the valley of death. There's no future to your SBIR. Whereas if you engage them early on, whether it's a tester or whether it is developing something or whether it's an advisory capacity, if you share that wealth with them, you'll walk the path of what is needed for transition and insertion for the agency which has that SBIR topic out that you're working on. So that was the first lesson, a hard lesson I learned. The second lesson I learned was you got to be flexible. When you have a SBIR topic that comes out and is released and you bid on it, that topic author probably put that topic in the system a year before. When you go for your phase 1 kickoff, that topic author is no longer there and nobody knows what he or she had in mind. So if you build only to what was in the SBIR solicitation, by God, you're not getting phase 2 for sure, because the team that's evaluating it is not the same. Similarly, when you come to phase 2 and you build only what was in that phase 2 thing, you're ending up in the valley of death for sure, because you're not building to the changing requirements. So basically the whole game of SBIR 1 and SBIR 2 is keep evolving, and you all have to stay within the scope because the contracting officer is only watching the scope. But that scope is very broad. So if you realize that the scope is broad and none of the people, for example, the TPOC certainly doesn't know how to transition it. That I can tell you without a doubt, because having done 64, the TPOC is just like a gatekeeper, but he or she doesn't know how to transition it. It's for you to keep evolving and keep changing what you're building within the broad scope so that contracting is happy, but you're building to a target that is commercializable. That realization is a must to succeed in this industry or in this space.
Have you guys had any engagements with the SBIRs or STTRs with universities?
We did a few STTRs, and then we made a decision not to do STTRs, and I'll tell you why. The university has a different mindset. University is there for research and development. If you want to succeed in a cyber world and have transition, and that transition is important because after I think the first 5 or 6 SBIRs, if you don't have a high transition index, a high commercialization index, you're not going to win yet another phase 1 or a phase 2. So the private industry is looking for transition, the university is looking for research, and that's a bridge too far to cross. They're very comfortable in a university, and they're comfortable because, you know, at the end of the day, the professors are measured, or the tenure comes from grants. They're not measured by how many products they got into the market. So, and there must be professors out there who want commercialization success, but we never successfully found that pairing. So we finally figured if we really wanted to succeed and keep a high CI, a high commercialization index, we needed to be in the CIBR bracket rather than have a mix of CIBR and STTR.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought because what you stated a little bit before then was, you know, you're willing to give a lot of the project away in some ways to the larger prime, but they're going to be actually a transition customer, possibly even buy you out, buy the technology, insert it with you, as opposed to putting that effort, money with the university where they're, you know, having high overhead rates to cover, and their main drive isn't to buy from you or commercialize it with you. There's different thoughts in that. Now, some topics are written at agencies specifically for STTRs, so there's some sort of level setting of the topics that are created are sometimes thought of being more appropriate for universities. But SBIR applicants can actually engage with the university too. But I always caution people, only do it if you need it, understanding the challenges engaging with the university have, but they're also, you know, good sources of technical expertise, possible equipment that you can use, you know, basically quote unquote rent through the program. So certainly some companies have a better use in what they're doing to engage with the university than others, but yeah, everybody's got their own thought on that, so that's interesting.
Yeah, you know, and especially like DARPA, for example. DARPA is a thought leader. A university partner on the DARPA project, that's not commercialized. They're thinking, you know, years into the future. For a DARPA topic, STTR and a university partner makes sense. Or NIH, which is looking for cures, right? I mean, it's not immediately how you're going to transition.
Right.
For those, STTR does make sense. For the more quick transition, maybe not.
Yeah, I guess, and not everybody's able to understand. You know, not that you guys didn't, but it's definitely a challenge at universities. A lot of them are trying to be more accommodating, goal-oriented transition if they can. So because they, you know, the bigger pot is, you know, licensing technologies, getting maybe licensing revenues or some sort of revenue back into the university because of the big things that are being done later on. But certainly a challenge. Tell us a little bit about some of the, you know, you guys have developed a lot of software tools, and how have you maybe what's your strategy for protecting your IP in the software? I know SBIR technologies and companies have really good data right protection. You know, the agencies can't reassign that to anybody if you're still working on it, but they also have a royalty-free use of the technology. How have you sort of manage this process, but also still be able to make money through the technology within the agencies?
So I have a unconventional approach to it. We haven't filed, in spite of having 64 SBIRs, we haven't filed a single, patented a single technology or protected it, right? One, because the SBIR data rights do protect us. The government has right to use for free for X number of years, and then it's protected. And they can, if they get a prime to use it, and the prime does have to pay a license fee. So that protection is there. But our thought process was as follows. I could file a patent and it's not that expensive and the paperwork is not that hard at all. But if somebody did steal the technology, we don't have the money to go run after them. If, let's say, a large prime stole it, they have deep pockets and we couldn't fight it. And it would take away not only dollars but time, which we probably don't have. But we thought any large company, before they steal it, they have a reputation to protect. So if a company got a reputation of stealing small companies' technologies, very soon they wouldn't be able to work with small companies. So riding on those two philosophies, that what we don't have the money or time to protect it, so no point filing a patent. And second, their own reputation will stop them from doing it. Actually, there's a third angle. More and more you see the government very wary of closed technologies. Every time I've gone into a meeting, the first meeting I've had with any new agency or any new group in an agency, they're like, is it an open source technology? Are you protecting it? Because we don't want to be locked into an IP protected technology. After the first 2 years of being in business, we kept saying our pitches, ours is an open source. It's free for you to use anytime you want, because the more independent we make you of us, the more you'll want to work with us, because there's no pressure to work with us. So the mix of those three thought processes has kept us from ever wanting to, copyright protect any of our technologies.
So sort of in finishing things up here, you've talked early on about early on in the company, trying to build that credibility, engage with your industry partners, try to get them to help validate what you guys are doing, be part of your projects, so that so small companies who are starting out, it's a great lesson learned, I think, to understand who the environment is you're working in, that sole proprietor working out of his basement with no discussion of any partners or collaborators on a proposal is going to have a hard time when they compete against someone who's engaged, has 3 or 4 people, either a university partner or outside company or another small business and or a large prime that's all integrating the right pieces for the proposal. So there's that great credibility of understanding how to build your project, build your credibility, and then understanding where SBIR fits into the development of your company as one of the funding strategies before you're getting revenues from sales. SBIR is a huge driver for a lot of early stage companies. So understanding, I think you guys did a great job of understanding where the product life cycle and how to create other opportunities when you get SBIRs from those SBIRs, and then your commercialization, transitioning, and understanding the drive to make sure the customers are getting what they want in sort of an open source way. And so you've kind of got all those three areas of done a great job at explaining those. Are there any other sort of tips or suggestions or sort of a final words of wisdom that you want to impart before we conclude today?
Yeah, what I'd like to say, which is something one of our clients, I think it was a government agency, told us a while back. Don't build great technology. Build the technology that is needed. We all are great technocrats. That's why we are in the SBIR world. But building awesome technology, which is game-changing, is what they're not looking for. What they're looking for is what helps me solve my need right now. It may be a very simple piece of the puzzle. Give them what they need rather than, this is what I passionately believe in and this is what I want to make. Because great technology lies by the wayside more often than not.
And that's a great point to make. I think it's understanding the agency you're targeting, certainly a DoD topic, what they're looking for can vary widely from a really high level of innovation to more incremental, smaller steps. But to understand what that is through maybe engagement, understanding the channel that they're working under, hopefully having discussion with them while you can to understand really what they're looking for. Comparing that to maybe the granting agencies at NIH and National Science Foundation, who are in fact looking for bigger I think, jumps in technology compared to the DoD ones. But the great point of
Mm-hmm.
understanding what the expectations are, because in the end, if they're looking to buy your technology, they are the ones you're trying to develop this for, not some other unknown people that might, developing your cool technology is great, but the technology someone's going to buy, it could be a different story there.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Um,
Yeah.
the form over function, right? Form over function. But as you
Yep.
mentioned, that
Form
you're
over
getting
function.
you're getting graded essentially at a certain point on your successes and your commercialization transition rates. And if you've not done a good job at getting a good proposal that's going to be one that's viable, then you're going to eventually be shut out of
Mm-hmm.
the SBIR process. So, well, Pallabi, thank you again for your time today. It's been very informative. I think as you've grown the company to over 400 people, that's a wonderful, I think, testimonial to the ability in the use of the SBIR program from a pure contracting agency standpoint, as opposed to trying to build a company that's going to be your goal is to get bought out after 3 years. A very different mindset of getting venture capital compared to building a company organically through contracts. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
great. You've done a great job of explaining things today. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck in moving things forward from here.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.